I never thought my quiet life, 20 years after buying my $1 million dream home, would end up colliding with the most outrageous HOA scheme I'd ever seen. But that was before Eva Flores, our brand new HOA president, started banging on my door at 7 a.m., waving a measuring tape like a sword and declaring that my rose bushes were violating community standards. At first, I thought it was just another power-hungry HOA Karen trying to flex her authority. But everything changed when my neighbor, Mark Patterson, rushed over later that afternoon, pale as a ghost, telling me he'd just found my house listed for sale online, under Flores Realty Group, without my permission. And the worst part? The HOA's new digital system showed that I had transferred ownership of my property during last month's records update. They really thought they could rewrite my deed and steal the home I've lived in for 2 decades, without knowing I'm the former governor of this state. Before we get deeper into this story, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there, and if you've ever dealt with a crazy HOA, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. When Mark left my porch, I stood there for a long moment, staring at the for sale listing on his phone as if looking harder would somehow make it disappear. My homey sanctuary, the place where I raised my kids and buried my wife's favorite rose-cutting was being sold by a woman who had only lived in the neighborhood for 6 weeks. And she thought she could get away with it because she assumed I was just another quiet, aging homeowner too distracted to notice fine print. She had no idea who she was dealing with. But at that moment, I didn't feel like a former governor. I felt like a man who just had the floor ripped out from under him. I went back inside, closed the door, and locked it out of instinct. Not that a simple lock could stop an HOA president who believed she owned the whole neighborhood. My hands were shaking, but my mind was sharper than it had been in years. When I get pushed into a corner, my instincts kick in: investigate, verify, respond. It's how I survived politics without losing my soul. I started with the envelope Eva had dropped on my porch earlier that morning. Final notice, it said in bold red letters across the top. Strange thing was, the letter wasn't addressed to me at all. It said, "To current occupant." That alone was a massive red flag. No legal eviction notice avoids naming the homeowner unless someone is intentionally trying to muddy records. I grabbed my reading glasses and sat down at the kitchen counter. The documents were full of official-sounding jargon, but nothing actually official. No court stamp, no sheriff's signature, no reference number, just a bunch of HOA bylaws, and a demand that I vacate the premises within 30 days due to deed irregularities discovered during the digital transition audit. Digital transition, that phrase again. Last month, Eva had proudly announced during the HOA meeting, where she spent 20 minutes bragging about her new streamlined compliance system, that the entire neighborhood was going paperless. I remembered rolling my eyes and walking out early, because the whole presentation looked like a scheme to justify higher HOA fees. I didn't think for a second that she would use it to rewrite the entire property database. But she did, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized how calculated it all was. I logged into the HOA portal, something I hadn't done since the old system 3 years ago, and immediately saw what Mark was talking about. On the first page, in bright green letters, it said, "Property ownership, transferred to Valley Ridge HOA. Date, 0914. Status, verified." Verified. By who? Eva herself? Her tech-savvy nephew? A bored intern? My blood boiled as I clicked deeper into the record. The digital deed document opened, showing a signature that looked almost like mine. But not quite. The angle of the J, the way the Bennett slanted upward instead of down, a good forger, but not good enough. And the timestamp? It was from a day when I was giving a televised speech at the state capitol. Not exactly the ideal moment to sneak off and sign away my home. I leaned back in my chair and exhaled hard. This wasn't incompetence. This was a calculated attack. I needed answers, and there was only one person who would tell me the truth without sugarcoating it. Linda Green, the longtime HOA secretary. Linda knew every historical document, every update, every bylaw, every shady decision the board had ever made. If there was dirt to find, Linda knew where it was buried. I dialed her number. No answer. I tried again. Still nothing. That wasn't like her. Linda always picked up on the first ring. A knot formed in my stomach. Before I could think of what to do next, I saw a shadow pass by my living room window. I moved toward it quietly and peered through the blinds. Eva Flores was standing in my front yard, holding a clipboard, talking on the phone, gesturing toward my house like a realtor showing off a property. I cracked the window slightly to hear her voice. Yes, Charles, I told you, it'll be cleared out within a month. Old record, technical glitch, whatever. Once we correct it, the sale can proceed. Trust me, the man won't fight either, barely attends meetings. And besides, she paused, he's a retiree. They never keep up with paperwork. Retiree? I let out a bitter laugh. I hadn't even announced my retirement publicly yet. She made assumptions, dangerous ones. I closed the window and stepped back before she noticed me. Her arrogance was staggering, openly discussing fraudulent activity on my lawn like she owned the place. Once she walked off toward the cul-de-sac, I immediately called David Ramirez. We'd worked together for most of my political career. Sharp mind, ironclad ethics. And currently Deputy Director of the State Investigations Bureau. He picked up on the first ring. Jeremy, you sound tense. I need you to look something up for me, I said. Something involving property records and a forged signature. There was a beat of silence. Where are you right now? At home. Barely. Stay put. I'm pulling up the recorder's database. I could hear him typing fast. Then a low whistle. Jeremy, this is bad. Your deed was digitally altered, and not through legal channels. Whoever did this bypassed county verification entirely. I know exactly who did it, I muttered. David typed more. And look at this. Your signature timestamp conflicts with your speech at the Capitol. I'm staring at the footage now. There's no way you signed anything. I didn't, I said. But Eva Flores wants to make it look like I did. Jeremy, David's voice dropped. This isn't just HOA drama, this is real estate fraud. High-level fraud. I figured as much. And she's selling my house on top of it. He cursed under his breath. I'll run this through our system, but be careful. Someone willing to falsify deeds won't stop at paperwork. I hung up and sat in silence. Then came a knock at my door. Not just any knock, a loud, forceful, rhythmic pounding, the kind meant to intimidate. I opened it slowly. Eva stood there, arms crossed, sunglasses reflecting the morning sun. Mr. Bennett, she said with a fake smile. Just a reminder, you're required to cut down your rose bushes by at least 3 inches before Friday, and you might want to prepare for the compliance inspection happening soon. You wouldn't want more violations. I stared at her, expression cold. Eva, did you list my house for sale? Her smirk didn't fade. The HOA has the authority to correct clerical issues. If any confusion arises, we'll handle it. You should really keep up with your paperwork. Then she leaned closer and lowered her voice. You should also know, resisting HOA procedure can carry consequences. She turned and strutted down my driveway, her heels clacking like a countdown to war. I shut the door and locked it again. If she wanted a battle, she was going to get one. But this time, I wouldn't be fighting as a homeowner. I'd be fighting as Jeremy Bennett, a man who once ran a state and still knew exactly how to dismantle corruption from the inside. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because of fear, no. Fear wasn't something I was unfamiliar with. I'd faced violent protests, political scandals, brutal debates, and high-stakes negotiations that could have toppled careers. But this was something different, something personal. When someone tries to take your home, they're not just coming after property, they're coming after your memories, your history, your very sense of belonging. Somewhere around 2 a.m., after pacing across the hardwood floors long enough to wear a groove, I finally forced myself to sit at the dining table with every piece of paperwork I could find. Boxes, folders, envelopes dating back 20 years. My late wife, Claire, used to tease me about keeping too much paper, but I could hear her voice now gentle, amused. You'll thank me someday, Jeremy. She was right. She always was. I flipped through old tax receipts, HOA notices, landscaping approvals, and then I found something I'd forgotten existed, a small sealed envelope with Claire's handwriting on it, for emergency only. My throat tightened. I hadn't seen her handwriting in years. With a shaking breath, I tore it open. Inside was a short note. If anything ever happens with the house, check the rose garden. The cedar box is buried beneath the original white rose bush. Love, C. I closed my eyes. Claire had planted that white rose bush on our 10th anniversary. She always said it was the heart of the garden, and she'd hidden something there. I grabbed a flashlight and headed outside. The air was cold enough to sting my lungs. When I reached the garden, the roses were still, sleeping in the dim glow of the porch light. I knelt beside the white rose bush and dug my hands into the soil. It didn't take long before my fingers hit wood. A cedar box, exactly where she said it would be. I pulled it out and brushed off the dirt. Inside was a pristine set of documents: the original purchase deed from 20 years ago, the notarized closing paperwork, the land survey, and even a handwritten ledger Claire kept of every repair, remodel, and contractor visit we'd ever approved. She had cataloged every interaction with the HOA, including dates, signatures, and meeting notes. And the most important item, a signed statement from the original HOA board, granting permanent grandfather protection to all landscaping elements existing before the HOA was formed. My rose garden was legally untouchable, and Eva Flores had no idea. I sat back in the dirt, holding the cedar box against my chest. For the first time since this nightmare started, I felt something shift inside me, like Claire was still fighting for our home with me. As I stood up, I heard footsteps. Someone was in my yard. I spun around, flashlight raised, and saw Mark Patterson hurrying toward me in his slippers, holding a laptop under his arm. "Jeremy," he shouted, waving frantically. "You need to see this. Right now." I ushered him inside, still gripping the cedar box. Mark set his laptop on the counter and pulled up the HOA database again. "Look at this," he pointed at the screen. "They changed your status again. Now it says, pending eviction owner unresponsive." "Unresponsive?" I muttered. "Eva was literally on my porch this morning. She's updating it manually." But that's not the worst part. He clicked another tab. My house was now listed as under contract. Someone had already put in an offer. "They're trying to sell my house while I'm still living in it?" Mark nodded grimly. "And it gets worse." I dug into Flores Realty Group's history. "Jeremy, she's done this before." My chest tightened. "Where?" 3 other neighborhoods, 3 other cities, always older residents. Always during digital transitions. Every time the HOA president was connected to Eva or one of her partners, and in every case, the homes were flipped within 60 days. A slow burn of anger rose in my chest. "She's running a fraud ring." Mark nodded. "A big one." I picked up my phone and called David Ramirez again. He answered instantly. "Tell me you have news," I said. "I have more than news," David replied. "I have confirmation. The county recorder cross-checked the deed. Your digital file was altered using a login belonging to someone in the records department, but that person hasn't worked there in 8 months. "A ghost account," I said. "Exactly. Someone inside the HOA or in Flores's circle has access to county systems." I closed my eyes and exhaled slowly. "David, they've already listed my house as under contract." His tone changed, instantly sharp, alert. "Okay, listen to me carefully. Do not confront Eva alone. And don't leave your house tonight. I'm assembling a team. There's a pattern: HERA fraud, forgery, property theft, elder targeting. This is bigger than your neighborhood. Bigger than all of us," I murmured. "We'll talk in person tomorrow. Keep every document you find. And Jeremy, yes? Good job finding that cedar box. Claire would be proud." The line went dead, but his words stayed with me. The next morning, just as the sun was creeping up behind the rooftops, I looked outside and froze. 2 strangers were standing on my sidewalk. One was holding a clipboard, the other a camera. They were taking photos of my house. I marched outside. "Excuse me," I called out. The man with the camera lowered it just long enough to glance at me. "Flores Realty said the property was ready for inspection. Buyers want updated photos." "I didn't authorize any photos," I said sharply. "This is my home." The realtor shrugged. "Not according to our paperwork." "If you take one more step on my property," I said, voice low and steady, "you'll be trespassing." The man hesitated. The woman with the clipboard whispered to him, "Let's just go. We don't need trouble." They scurried off toward their SUV. As they pulled away, I spotted someone watching from across the street. Eva Flores, standing in her driveway, arms crossed, a smile resting lightly on her lips. Like she'd already won. I walked straight toward her. "You're out of your mind if you think you can get away with this, Mr. Bennett," she said sweetly. "Everything we're doing is fully compliant with HOA procedure. You forged my signature." She kept smiling. "Prove it." The sheer confidence in her eyes. "No, not confidence. Arrogance told me everything I needed to know." She thought she was untouchable. "Eva," I said softly, leaning in so only she could hear, "you made one mistake." She raised an eyebrow. "And what's that?" "You picked the wrong house. Something flickered in her expression. Annoyance, maybe doubt, but she recovered quickly. "We'll see," she whispered. I turned and walked back home with a calm she didn't understand, because at that moment I realized something. I wasn't going to fight Eva Flores like a neighbor. I was going to fight her like Jeremy Bennett, former governor, the man who'd taken down corruption rings twice her size, and she had no idea what was coming. By noon, an email notification appeared on my phone marked urgent. It was from Linda Green, the HOA secretary. Subject line: "I have information, but you must not tell Eva. She can't know we spoke." My pulse quickened. The war had officially begun. Linda's email rattled around in my head all afternoon. She wasn't the type to panic easily. I'd known her for years, methodical, quiet, observant, the kind of person who'd survived 5 different HOA presidents without once raising her voice. If she was scared, then Eva's operation was even uglier than I'd imagined. Her message was short. "Jeremy, I need to talk to you privately. I can't speak on the phone. Too risky. Meet me at 7 p.m. behind the community pool. Don't come early. Don't park where she can see you. L. Green." That alone told me everything. Eva wasn't just overreaching, she was watching people. I spent the rest of the day preparing. Not weapons or anything dramatis evidence, files, notes. The cedar box Claire left me. Every printed document I could gather. I scanned everything twice, uploaded the scans to a cloud drive David had created for investigations during my time in office, and locked the originals in a fireproof safe. When I left the house that evening, I didn't drive. I walked. I took the path behind the neighborhood greenbelt where tree cover blocked the view from most houses. By the time I reached the pool, the sky had turned indigo and the lights along the fence glowed pale and shaky. Linda was already there, sitting on a bench with her hands clasped tightly in her lap. When she saw me, she jumped a little. "Linda," I said gently, "it's just me." She exhaled shakily. "Thank God. Jeremy, I'm terrified." I sat beside her, careful not to crowd her. "Tell me everything." She glanced around before leaning in. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Eva's been planning this for months, maybe years." My jaw tightened. "Go on." Before she became HOA president, she was already working with that developer, what's his name? Whitman. Charles Whitman, I said. "I saw him in my security footage." Linda nodded quickly. "Yes, him. And Jeremy, he's connected to people in the county clerk's office. Not officially, but he knows exactly who to bribe, who to pressure, who to offer opportunities." I kept my expression neutral, but inside, a slow burn of rage flickered. "I didn't think much of it at first," she continued. "People talk big during campaigns, you know? But then the digital transition started, and suddenly files were missing. Paper records disappeared. Meeting minutes changed. Signatures I knew belonged to former board members were different." She pressed a trembling hand to her forehead. "I started saving things. Everything. Every draft. Every email. Every note Eva left on my desk. She didn't know I kept a personal copy of every HOA document since 2010. I couldn't help but let out a slow, impressed breath. "You saved them?" She nodded. "On a USB flash drive. And you're certain she has no idea?" "Oh, she'd kill me if she knew." Linda swallowed. "Not literally, I think. But she'd ruin my life." "She ruins anyone who crosses her. You should see what she did to the Millers last year. They moved out of state after she claimed their deck violated setback rules and fined them into financial ruin." I remembered the Millers. "Good people, quiet. They didn't even fight back," Linda whispered. "They just left." My stomach twisted. I'd seen political intimidation, but this was something else. Abuse of power on the smallest scale often caused the deepest scars. "Linda," I said gently, "what exactly is on that USB?" She looked at me, then really looked at me, and I saw years of fear sitting behind her eyes. "Proof," she whispered. "Enough to destroy everything Eva's built." She reached into her purse and handed me a tiny silver flash drive. My fingers closed around it like it was made of glass. "What's on it?" "Emails between Eva and Whitman discussing property takeovers. Instructions on how to modify digital records during the transition. Names of senior residents they targeted. Financial transfers from HOA accounts to shell companies. Jeremy, there's even a spreadsheet. A damn spreadsheet listing which homes should be taken next." My heart dropped. "Was my home on it?" I asked. She nodded slowly. with a note beside your name. It said, Bennett, thy value property, emotionally distracted, easy to manipulate. A long silence settled between us. The wind rustled the leaves. A dog barked in the distance. Even after everything, I said quietly, she still thinks I'm clueless. Linda gave a humorless, shaky laugh. Eva thinks everyone is clueless. That's how she gets away with it. Not anymore, I said. We walked back separately so it wouldn't look suspicious. When I got home, I locked every door and closed every curtain before plugging the USB into my laptop. A folder appeared. HOA internal, do not delete. Inside were subfolders. Financial transfers. Emails. Altered meeting minutes. Digital deed alterations. Target list. Realtor contracts. Deleted files, recovered. It was all there. I opened the email chain first. The earliest one was from nearly a year ago. From Eva Flores. To C. Whitman. Subject, vulnerable properties. I've identified a few potential targets. Elderly owners. Some widowed. Some too busy to keep up with paperwork. We'll need cooperation from records to push these through. Another. From C. Whitman. To Eva Flores. Subject, deed adjustments. Make sure the HOA pushes the digital compliance narrative. The more chaos, the easier it is to bury the changes. Then one that made my blood run cold. From Eva. To Whitman. Subject, Bennett property. He's sentimental. Garden is his weakness. Use that. Distract him with violations. He won't notice the updates until it's too late. Garden. My garden. Claire's roses. She'd weaponized the one thing most sacred to me. I clicked into the financial folder. There were transfers, large ones going from HOA accounts into companies named things like Flores Community Development Initiative and Whitman Residential Group. Shells, all of them. I opened the target list last. 30 homes, 30 addresses, 30 vulnerable families. My address was number 16. Next to it was the note Linda mentioned, emotionally distracted. She underestimated me. Worse, she underestimated Claire. That cedar box was the reason I was still standing. Just as I was closing the folder, my security app pinged. Motion detected. West fence. I clicked the live camera feed. 2 figures in dark clothing were walking along the fence line with flashlight zones shining the light on my property markers, the other inspecting my back gate. Their movements were too deliberate to be random, and then one of them did something that made my stomach drop. He lifted his leg and urinated on my fence. A mark. A message. Like they were claiming territory. I zoomed the camera. Their faces were partially covered, but I caught enough to know. These weren't kids or wanderers. They were hired. Grown men in work boots and utility jackets. The feed timestamped the footage, 2:13 a.m. Immediately, I saved the video, made 2 external backups, and sent 1 copy straight to David with the subject line. They're moving faster than we thought. Call me at dawn. I didn't sleep at all. Adrenaline kept me awake. By sunrise, a plan had begun to form, solid, organized, unstoppable. Eva Flores wanted to steal my house. Instead, she was about to watch hers burn down in court, one fraudulent document at a time. And when I saw her walking down the sidewalk later that morning, sunglasses on, fake confidence in every step, she paused, turned her head, looked directly at the security camera on my porch. We locked eyes through the lens. And for the first time, she looked nervous. The next morning, the neighborhood felt different, not peaceful, not normal, but like a stage set before the curtain rises. There was a tension in the air, a collective hush, as if every house knew something was brewing beneath the manicured lawns and white picket fences. And at the center of it all stood my home, the one Eva planned to erase from under me. But today, I wasn't reacting, I was preparing. I spent the early hours organizing every piece of evidence into neat stacks across my dining table: paper documents from Claire's cedar box, screenshots of the forged deed, emails from Linda's USB, financial transfers, and the footage of the 2 men marking my fence like animals. Every filed paper felt like loading another round into a magazine. I wasn't just building a case, I was building an arsenal. By 8 a.m., I heard footsteps outside. Not the hurried, sharp tap of Eva's designer heels. These were softer, hesitant. I glanced out the window. Mark Patterson stood at the end of my driveway, one hand raised in a small wave, the other holding a folder bulging with printouts. I opened the door before he knocked. "You okay?" he asked. "As okay as a man whose house is being sold without his consent can be." He gave a short laugh. "I figured you'd say something like that." Mark stepped inside, closed the door behind him, and laid the fat folder on the table next to my documents. "I did some digging after last night," he said. "And Jeremy, you're not going to believe this. I've stopped being surprised," I said. "You might want to sit anyway." I sat. Mark pulled out his laptop and opened several tabs full of spreadsheets, property records, and screenshots of Google Street View. "This looks like too much even for you," I said. "I barely slept," he admitted. "But listen, this goes further back than the digital transition. Eva's been prepping for this since before she moved in." He pointed at the screen. "See this house? 92 Redwood Lane. Last year the owner was fined 11 separate times for grass height violations. Then she suddenly sold the house, moved to Florida, and Flores Realty flipped the property within 2 months. I remembered the previous owner, Mrs. Quinn. Sweet woman, widowed. That wasn't the only one," Mark continued. "See this one, and that one? All elderly, all long-term residents. All suddenly willing to sell after HOA pressure." He scrolled, 6 houses in total. My jaw clenched. I had neighbors, people I'd spoken to at block parties who had been pushed out. "This isn't just fraud," I said quietly. "This is predatory." "And it gets even better," Mark said, voice dripping with sarcasm. "You know the landscaping company the HOA keeps hiring? Yeah. The guys who trimmed my roses without asking. Turns out, their business is registered to one of Whitman's shell companies. And guess what else? Every house that got forced out had landscaping violations first. Same pattern. It all clicked. The violations weren't arbitrary. They were strategic. A way to harass people until they either left voluntarily or broke from stress, making them perfect targets for deed manipulation. I leaned back, hands steepled. She's been building this operation like a corporation. Targeted harassment, financial pressure, forged documents, insider connections. "She's a crime ring with an HOA badge," Mark said. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. "David Ramirez." I answered immediately. "Tell me you have something." "Oh, I have a lot," he said. "Jeremy, this just escalated." "What happened?" "A county clerk named Sandra Lowe came forward this morning. She says someone from Flores Realty paid her to adjust digital ownership records when the system went live, but she backed out when she realized what it was for." My pulse quickened. "Did she name names?" "Oh yeah," David said. "And Eva's name is on top of that list." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "I'll be at your place in 2 hours," David continued. "We're gathering a team. Keep everything safe until then." He hung up. Mark let out a long whistle. "You weren't kidding when you said this was big." "It's bigger than any of us realized," I said. "And Eva knows the walls are closing in." As if summoned by the mention of her name, I suddenly heard her voice outside the window, shrill, commanding, angry. "I don't care what the listing price was yesterday. I want it updated now. I have buyers arriving tomorrow, and this needs to look clean and professional." I walked to the window. Eva was in her driveway, waving her arms at a realtor while 2 men loaded yard signs into a truck. She was red-faced, hair messy, looking nothing like the composed dictator she liked to be. "Unbelievable," Mark muttered. "She's still doing showings while being investigated?" "She doesn't know she's being investigated yet," I said, "but she will very soon." Eva suddenly turned toward my house, and for a moment our eyes met across the lawn. Her expression shifted, not fear exactly, but suspicion. She watched me the way a wolf watches another wolf approaching its territory. I didn't look away. Not this time. She broke the stare first. When I stepped back, Mark asked, "So what now?" "Now?" I said. "We prepare for the HOA meeting." He frowned. "The one Eva announced for tonight? That one?" I nodded. "She's cornered. And a cornered animal is dangerous, but she's also sloppy, desperate. Which means she'll try to force something through tonight before any investigation can catch up." Mark hesitated. "Do you want backup?" "I want allies," I said, "and you're one of the few I trust." He puffed his chest slightly, proud. "Then I'm in." The rest of the day felt like the calm before a storm. I kept my porch lights on, cameras on, phone fully charged. Before sunset, I slipped all physical documents into a folder and placed it inside my leather briefcase, the same one I used as governor during budget negotiations. There was something poetic about bringing that bag back into battle. At 6:45 p.m., I walked toward the community center. The path was lined with familiar houses, but tonight, curtains twitched, porch lights flickered, silhouettes hovered behind windows. Everyone sensed the tension. When I reached the entrance, I saw a cluster of neighbors gathered outside, worried, confused, whispering. "Jeremy," Mrs. Carter said, stepping forward. "Is it true? What Eva's been doing?" Another man asked. I nodded once. "It's worse than we thought. But tonight, you'll hear everything." They followed me inside like a silent procession. The community center was already buzzing when we entered. Eva stood at the front, hands on hips, glaring at the podium like she was preparing for a royal speech. Behind her were 2 HOA board members I didn't recognize, recruits, likely handpicked to nod along to anything she said. When she spotted me, her eyes narrowed. "Mr. Bennett," she said, voice syrupy with contempt. "I didn't expect you to attend. Considering you're trying to illegally sell my home," I replied. "I wouldn't miss it for the world." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Eva slammed her gavel on the podium. "Order! This meeting is to address the community's compliance issues and digital ownership clarifications. Anyone disrupting—" "You mean your compliance issues?" I interrupted, stepping forward. "And your forged clarifications?" Her face turned a dangerous shade of red. "Sit down, Jeremy." "No," I said simply. Gasps filled the room. Eva was shaking now, not with fear but rage. "You have no authority here," she snapped. A slow smile spread across my face. "Funny you say that," I murmured, pulling a stack of documents from my briefcase, "because the State Investigations Bureau disagrees." The room fell silent, and that was only the beginning of her unraveling. Eva's face drained of color the moment she saw the state seal printed across the top of the documents in my hand. It was subtle, barely a flicker, but I caught it. And judging by the murmurs rising through the room, so did everyone else. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. When a crowd smells truth, it leans toward the person who isn't shouting. I walked toward the front of the room, the echo of my steps filling the silence. "Before we begin," I said calmly, "I want to clarify something." I held up the first document. "This is the original deed to my home, dated 20 years ago. Signed, notarized, filed with the county, and never, let me repeat, never transferred to this HOA. 100 eyes turned toward me, then back to Eva. She clutched the edge of the podium with white knuckles. "Those records were updated during the digital transition," she shot back. "You failed to verify your ownership, Mr. Bennett." "That's not the HOA's fault." I took another step forward. "And this," I said, lifting the next page, "is a full record of the digital transition logs, obtained directly from the county clerk's office." I let the weight of my words hang. "Funny thing, Eva, the logs show that my deed was edited using a login belonging to a clerk who hasn't worked for the county in 8 months. Gasps erupted. Some whispered. Others cursed under their breath. Eva blinked hard. "Those logs must be fabricated." I smiled, but there was nothing nice about it. "You might want to be careful accusing the State Investigations Bureau of committing forgery." I turned the page toward the crowd so they could see the timestamp, the username, the county seal. Someone in the back shouted, "She forged his deed?" Another voice added, "What else has she changed?" Eva slammed her gavel so hard the head snapped off. It clattered across the podium and fell to the floor. Her composure shattered with it. "This meeting is out of order," she barked. "Sit down, all of you. Right now." No one sat. The entire room was turning against her. That's when Linda Green finally stood up. She'd been sitting near the front, hands trembling in her lap, waiting just as we'd planned. "Eva," Linda said, voice surprisingly firm, "I think you've said enough." Eva spun toward her like a viper mid-strike. "Linda, you keep quiet or what?" Linda snapped. "You'll do to me what you did to the Millers? Or the Quinns? You'll fine me until I'm bankrupt? Forge my documents? Steal my house?" The room erupted again. People began whispering fiercely, turning to their neighbors, connecting dots they'd ignored for too long. Eva looked stunned. She hadn't expected resistance from someone so soft-spoken. Linda reached into her purse and pulled out a small silver USB drive, holding it up for everyone to see. "I have every email you sent," she said steadily, "every draft of every fraudulent document, every bit of property tampering you ordered, every dollar you funneled into Whitman's shell companies." The room exploded. Fraud. She targeted seniors. She tried to sell my house too. We need the police. Eva's eyes widened in terror, now real terror, not anger. She lunged toward Linda, perhaps hoping to snatch the drive before it was too late, but two neighbors stepped in front of her, blocking her path. I spoke over the chaos. And here's the best part. I pulled my phone from my pocket and lifted it high enough for everyone to see. David Ramirez, Deputy Director of the State Investigations Bureau, is on his way here right now, with a team. Eva froze, and they're bringing warrants. The silence that followed was unlike anything I'd ever heard, thick, heavy, electric. Eva looked around the room, eyes darting, searching for an escape route. But there wasn't one. One of the HOA board members sitting behind her began quietly sliding away from the table, as if hoping no one would notice he'd ever been associated with her. But people noticed, and they booed him out of the room. Eva tried to speak, started with an inhale, a twitch of her jaw, but all that came out was a breathless, trembling, "You don't understand." "No," I cut in. "You don't." I stepped right up to her, close enough to see the smear of mascara beneath her eyes. "You targeted the elderly. You rewrote legal documents. You tried to destroy people's lives. You tried to steal their homes. You broke the law in ways you can't even begin to comprehend." Her lips trembled. You thought everyone here was weak, that they wouldn't fight back, that no one checked paperwork." I leaned in slightly. "You should have done your homework, Eva." The door at the back of the room opened with a heavy metallic click, and there he was, David Ramirez, suit pressed, badge out, eyes hard. Behind him were two uniformed state agents and a county sheriff's deputy. David's voice was clear and unforgiving. "Eva Flores, stand where you are." People stepped aside instantly. Eva straightened, her spine rigid with fear. David approached the front of the room, flanked by his team. He removed a folded document from his coat pocket and read, "You are under investigation for counts of real estate fraud, document forgery, unlawful property transfer, impersonation of government officials, wire fraud, elder exploitation, and misuse of HOA authority." A quiet chorus of shocked gasps swept across the room. Eva's knees buckled slightly. No, this is a misunderstanding." Two was following procedure. "Whose procedure?" Linda said, arms crossed. "Yours?" Eva's jaw trembled. "You don't understand. I had debts. I needed money. Whitman said he would—" "You can explain it to a judge," David interrupted. He nodded to the sheriff's deputy. The sound of handcuffs clicking shut around Eva's wrists echoed like a gunshot. Some neighbors cried. Others applauded. A few shouted, "Take Whitman next." The agents began collecting HOA computers, files, boxes, everything. One of them approached me quietly. "Mr. Bennett, Agent Collins. Your recordings and documents were crucial. Thank you." I nodded once, just doing what needed to be done. Eva whimpered as she was led out of the community, center crying, shaking, insisting it was all a mistake. No one believed her. No one even looked sympathetic. As the agents pushed open the doors to escort her outside, a reporter from Channel 9 News was waiting with a camera crew. Microphones shot forward like spears. "Miss Flores, is it true you attempted to sell the former governor's home illegally? What do you have to say to the dozens of victims? Are you connected to developer Charles Whitman?" Eva snapped. "He set me up," she screamed. "Bennett planted evidence. This is a conspiracy." Flashbulbs went off. Someone shouted from across the parking lot, "You ruined our lives." Another yelled, "Lock her up." She tried to hide her face behind her cuffed hands, but the world had already seen everything. Inside the community center, neighbors clustered around me. Some hugged me. Others shook my hand. A few simply whispered, "Thank you." Mark clapped a hand on my shoulder. "You did it, Jeremy." "No," I said softly. "We did." Linda approached next, wiping tears from her eyes. I never thought we'd actually stop her." "You were the bravest person in this entire room," I said. "Without you, none of this would have come to light." She shook her head. "I was just tired of being afraid." David came over, tucking a folder under his arm. "This is only the beginning. We're opening a statewide investigation. Whitman is next. We found enough in that USB to take down every accomplice he has." "You'll bring them all down," I said. He nodded once. "Count on it." The crowd slowly dispersed until only a few of us were left. The adrenaline finally drained from my body, leaving exhaustion in its wake. But it was a good exhaustion, a victorious exhaustion. As I stepped out into the cool night air, I looked across the street toward Eva's house, quiet now, dark, empty, no more threats, no more forged violations, no more fear, just silence and justice. But deep down, I knew the story wasn't over yet. Because people like Whitman didn't slither away quietly. And the mess Eva left behind would take more than one night to fix. Still, tonight was a turning point. Tonight, the community stood up. Tonight, we reclaimed our homes. And tomorrow I would pick up the broken pieces of Claire's memorial bench and start rebuilding, piece by piece, just like she would have wanted. The night Eva was arrested should have brought peace, but instead it felt like the quiet after a wildfire's smoke still in the air, ash still settling, and everyone wondering what would grow back and what had been lost for good. I walked home from the community center slower than usual, not from fatigue but from the weight of everything that had happened. Neighbors lingered in their driveways, whispering, watching the chaos of flashing lights fade as the police convoy carried Eva away. But even as the sirens dissolved into the distance, I knew this was only the beginning. Eva was just the face of something much larger. When I reached my house, I stood at the front gate for a moment, taking in the quiet. My roses were still, swaying slightly in the cool night breeze. Claire's garden, my sanctuary, had survived the worst of Eva's attacks, but the broken memorial bench reminded me how fragile things could be. I went inside, placed my briefcase gently on the dining table, and sat down with a long exhale. The cedar box was still open, old documents spread across the wood like a map of my life. Evidence had won the battle tonight, but the war Whitman, the shell companies, the county corruption was far from over. My phone buzzed. A message from David. Be ready tomorrow. Big developments coming. I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, I woke to a knock at my door, not frantic, not threatening, but firm. When I opened it, Officer Rodriguez stood there, hat tucked under his arm. "Mr. Bennett," he said, "we're going through community footage from last week. Wanted to drop this off personally." He handed me a flash drive. "What's on it?" I asked. "Security camera footage from 3 different houses," he said. "You're going to want to see it." He hesitated, then added, "And Bennett, good job last night. You probably saved a lot of people." I nodded and closed the door. Inside, I plugged the flash drive into my laptop. 3 folders appeared. Redwood Lane footage. Timestamp 2:14 a.m. Unknown vehicle logs. I clicked the second folder, first timestamped. At almost the same moment, the 2 men were prowling around my property. The first video showed them walking along Mrs. Carter's fence, checking boundary markers. The second showed them peering into the Millers' old backyard, whispering to each other. In one clip, one of them held a stack of papers and pointed at different houses like targets. They weren't random vandals. They were surveying, preparing, marking which homes to take next. A chill ran through me. But the third folder hit harder. Unknown vehicle logs. Someone had been driving slowly through the neighborhood late at night, the same SUV, circling block after block, headlights dimmed. When I zoomed in, the license plate wasn't clear, but the silhouette behind the wheel, it looked a hell of a lot like Charles Whitman. I called David instantly. "You need to come over," I said. "Now." He arrived an hour later with Agent Collins and another investigator. I watched their expressions change as I showed them the videos. "This confirms our theory," Collins said. "Whitman didn't just partner with Eva, he directed the operation." David rubbed his jaw. "And he's still out there." I felt my fists tighten. "So what's our next move?" David flipped open a folder. "We're securing warrants for Whitman's offices, his properties, his real estate subsidiaries, and we're issuing a temporary freeze on all HOA-controlled bank accounts in this community." "He's not getting a penny more out of this place," Agent Collins added. "And Bennett, we're also protecting your house. You're a key witness now. There's a chance Whitman might retaliate." I looked out the window toward the roses. Let him try. But beneath that confidence, I felt something deeper, a cold certainty that things were about to escalate. Around noon, neighbors started arriving at my house, one by one. I didn't plan for it. They just came. Word spreads fast in small communities, and last night's meeting had shaken everyone awake. Mrs. Carter was the first. She hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. "Thank you," she whispered, "for all of us." Then came the miller's daughter, tears streaming down her face. "My parents are coming home," she said. "Because of you." Then a retired veteran named Sam, who'd been fined so many times he nearly lost his house. "Couldn't sleep last night," he said, voice trembling. "Feels like a weight's off my chest." We all sat in my living room, sharing stories, things everyone had been too scared to say before. Harassment, threats, fines invented out of thin air, anonymous letters shoved under doors. Eva had run this community like a tyrant, and in some twisted way, we'd all accepted it because we'd felt alone. But not anymore. As the crowd grew, Linda Green arrived, clutching a large cardboard box. "These are the HOA records Eva tried to shred," she said, placing the box on my table. I grabbed them before her assistant could destroy everything. Inside were files stamped with red. "To be cleared. Ready for transition. Target, vulnerable resident. 30 homes, 30 lives." Everyone fell silent as we looked at the papers together. Faces hardened, tears formed, anger simmered. "This ends today," Linda whispered. I placed a hand on her shoulder. "It will." Later that afternoon, the sound of engines broke the quiet. 3 black SUVs rolled into the neighborhood. Doors opened in unison, and 9 state agents stepped out. They moved with purpose, heading straight for the HOA building. Neighbors gathered in clusters along the sidewalks, whispering, "What's happening? Is it Whitman? Are they arresting more people?" David approached me. "Stay with the group, no matter what you hear." "What does that mean?" I asked. "We think Whitman's assistant might be destroying records inside the HOA office. Our warrant gives us full authority." "Just stay here." The agents rushed inside. Shouts followed. Someone tried to run out the back door and was tackled instantly. Moments later, 2 men were escorted out in handcuffs, one of them, the thin, nervous man I'd seen handing Eva documents in past meetings. The other, a young county records clerk. Neighbors gasped. Someone whispered, "She bought off county employees too?" David turned toward the crowd. "We'll make a public statement soon. What matters now is that the fraud ring is being dismantled." But before anyone could respond, distant yelling erupted from across the neighborhood. The crowd parted. A man was sprinting down the street toward us, hair wild, shirt untucked, eyes burning with anger. It took me a second to recognize him. Charles Whitman. "You!" he shouted, pointing directly at me. "You ruined everything." State agents stepped between us instantly, hands on their holsters. Whitman kept coming until they physically pushed him back. "You think you can expose me? You think anyone will believe a washed-up governor over a legitimate businessman?" I didn't flinch. "You forged deeds. You stole homes. You preyed on the elderly. And you're going to prison for every single one of those crimes." His face twisted. "None of this would have happened if you'd just stayed quiet." "I don't stay quiet," I said. "Not when people's homes are on the line." The agents moved in. Whitman's ranting grew desperate. "You haven't seen the last of this. You think you've won? This whole community is mine." His voice cracked as the cuffs clicked around his wrists. Agent Collins recited his rights while Whitman screamed curses at me. Neighbors gathered behind me, dozens of them. And for the first time, Whitman realized he wasn't facing just me. He was facing all of us. As they dragged him away, someone behind me murmured, "Good riddance." The neighborhood fell silent. Then applause erupted, loud, raw, emotional. Some people cried, others hugged each other. A few just stood there, overwhelmed. But as I soaked in the moment, I felt something tugging inside me. Not relief, not triumph. Responsibility. This wasn't over. Eva's reign was finished. Whitman was in custody. The fraud ring was crumbling. But the damage? Lives uprooted, trust shattered, homes stolen. The healing needed to begin. And somehow, everyone was looking to me. Not as governor, as a neighbor, as someone who refused to back down. "Jeremy," Mark said, stepping beside me. "What now?" I looked at the crowd, my community, and spoke softly. "Now," I said, "we rebuild what she tried to destroy," and I meant every word. The day Whitman was arrested felt like waking from a nightmare, one of those long, twisting dreams where you're running through dark hallways and nothing makes sense until suddenly the lights come on. But waking up didn't mean the danger was over. It meant we finally saw the damage clearly, and it was worse than any of us imagined. After the agents hauled Whitman away, neighbors lingered in clusters, murmuring to each other with a mixture of shock, relief, and exhaustion. The whole neighborhood felt like a crime scene because honestly, it was. Fraud, intimidation, forged documents, illegal surveillance, every house had been touched by the rot Eva and Whitman cultivated. I stood in the center of it all, watching the way people gravitated toward each other, comfort, fear, shared trauma pulling them closer. For the first time in a long time, I saw unity instead of isolation. But unity wasn't enough, not when our homes, our paperwork, our finances, and our safety were still in uncertain territory. That's when Agent Collins approached me again, her expression grave. "Mr. Bennett, do you have a moment?" I nodded, stepping aside with her. "We've just finished a preliminary scan of the HOA office. It's worse than we expected." They had shredded documents, burned CD-ROMs, wiped computers. They knew we were coming. "Eva must have warned them," I said. "Not Eva. Someone else." She handed me a printout list of digital logins accessed within the last 12 hours. One entry was highlighted. Username, R. Thompson. Access level, Administrator. Status, active. I blinked. "Who's that?" "Riley Thompson, HOA Vice President. He fled right before we arrived." The name rang a bell. I struggled to place it. Tall guy? Brown hair? Always wearing that ridiculous plaid tie? "That's him," she said. "He had full administrative access. He's the one who wiped the database." I let out a slow, tired breath. So Whitman wasn't acting alone. "No," she said quietly. "Not by a long shot." Behind us, another agent shouted, "Bag these files!" And neighbors flinched like the sound was a gunshot. The whole community was on edge, and it would take more than an arrest to calm them. "Agent Collins," I said, lowering my voice. "Tell me honestly, can people get their homes back? Their records? Their deeds? Everything Eva stole? All of it," she assured me. "But it'll take time. There's a lot of paperwork to reconstruct. A lot of victims, a lot of fraud, and a lot of healing," I said. She nodded. "That too." When she walked off, I stayed outside for a while, staring at the rows of houses bathed in late afternoon sunlight. These weren't just structures, they were people's histories. Their first Christmases, their last good years with aging parents. The place where children took first steps, where teenagers slammed doors, where families fought and forgave. Homes aren't just property, they're identity. And Eva tried to erase that identity one manipulated signature at a time. Mark walked up to me with 2 cups of coffee, one for him, one for me. The man always knew when caffeine was required. "Looks like you've still got a governor's posture," he said lightly, handing me the cup. "I hope that's a compliment," I said. "It is," he said. "You held this neighborhood together when everything fell apart." I sipped the coffee, letting the warmth settle in my chest. "Honestly, I'm still trying to process everything." "You and the rest of us," he replied. "But Jeremy, I need to show you something." He guided me toward his porch where he had his laptop open. He pulled up a document, another spreadsheet, but this one wasn't from Eva's files. It was from the county property database. "Look," he said, pointing at a column labeled Transfer Requests Pending. My stomach dropped. There were 12 houses still pending ownership transfer in the system, homes Eva hadn't gotten to yet but had already flagged for takeover. Some belonged to residents who didn't even know they were in danger. "We need to warn them," I said immediately. "I already emailed them," Mark said. "Some didn't reply, some are confused, and 2 said they never received any transfer paperwork but now see fines piling up." I rubbed a hand down my face. "This isn't over." "No," Mark said gently, "but we're winning." His optimism was comforting, but it didn't fix the immediate problem. The neighborhood needed leadership, a steady hand to guide them through the chaos, and it wasn't going to be Eva. That evening, a spontaneous neighborhood meeting formed on my front lawn. People brought chairs, drinks, even a few casseroles, like it was an impromptu potluck born from shared trauma. The sun dipped behind the houses, casting warm gold across the crowd. "Jeremy," Linda Green called out as she approached with a binder under her arm. "We need to talk about the HOA." Everyone quieted. Linda took a deep breath. "The HOA charter requires a new president be elected immediately if the current one is removed for cause." Someone shouted, "Make it Linda!" Others echoed, "Linda, Linda, she saved us." But Linda raised her hand. "No, not me." The crowd quieted. "I'll do my part," she said, "but I need someone strong at the front, someone this community respects. Someone who knows how to deal with complicated legal messes." Dozens of eyes turned toward me. I swallowed. "I'm not running for HOA president," I said firmly. A few people chuckled, thinking I was joking. I wasn't. I spent years in politics, I continued. I didn't retire just to become a neighborhood politician. You don't need a president. You need transparency, honesty, and a system that can't be corrupted. Linda nodded. Which brings us to this. She opened the binder and held up a draft document. We want a new bylaw named after you, she said. The Bennett rule. I blinked. What? Mark nudged me. Just listen. Linda cleared her throat and read aloud. Asterisk, asterisk, the Bennett rule. All property record changes require triple verification. Resident signature in person, county countersignature, digital confirmation with two-factor authentication, no exceptions, no overrides, ever. Asterisk, asterisk. The crowd murmured in agreement. Another neighbor shouted, add that any major HOA decision must be voted on by at least 75% of residents. Seconded. Thirded. The energy was shifting from fear to empowerment. Linda closed the binder. Jeremy, you helped bring down a criminal scheme that almost destroyed this neighborhood. We want this rule in place so it never happens again. People applauded. Some cried. A few neighbors hugged each other. I looked out over the crowd, old couples, young families, retirees, single parents, all gathered not because I led them, but because together they'd found their voice again. Finally, I nodded. If you need me to help write it, revise it, or explain it, I'm in. Cheers erupted, but I raised my hand for silence. There's something else we need to do, I said. Everyone leaned closer. We rebuild. We restore what Eva damaged, and we make sure every person she hurt gets their home, their dignity, and their peace back. Linda smiled softly. You sound like a governor again. Just a neighbor, I said. A neighbor who finally got tired of watching good people get pushed around. As the meeting ended and the crowd slowly dispersed, I walked back toward my garden. The roses glowed in the twilight, gentle and unwavering. I crouched down beside Claire's favorite white rose bush and touched the petals lightly. Looks like we did it, I whispered. The wind rustled the leaves, and for a moment it felt like she was there with me, proud, steady, reminding me why I fought so hard. Because home isn't about walls or roofs, it's about memory, love, legacy, and community. And now, ours could finally begin to heal. In the end, this whole mess wasn't really about an HOA, or even a corrupt president who thought she was untouchable. It was about something much deeper, how fragile home can be when we assume the system will always protect us. What Eva and Whitman underestimated was the one thing they could never forge or falsify: people who refuse to back down when something truly matters. Your name on a deed is important, but your voice, your courage, and your willingness to stand up for your neighbors, that's what really keeps a community safe. If there's one thing I hope you take from my story, it's this. Never let anyone bully you out of the place you love. Question the official letters. Read every line. Talk to your neighbors. And when something feels wrong, don't stay silent. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever dealt with an unreasonable HOA or a power-tripping neighbor? Tell your story in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe so you can see how the next HOA bully gets taken down. We're just getting started.